Hey, so whether you are a fellow student like me, or if you are more in a career stage in your life, then you have the potential to experience burnout. Now, if you ever have, then you probably know that burnout sucks. So let's talk about what it is and how to combat it. Firstly, just to define burnout, it is a state of physical, mental, or emotional exhaustion, or all three, as a result of chronic stress. Now, it's an occupational phenomenon, which means that the stress is likely coming from work or academia, and because of this, it can be really difficult to diagnose because it's not a specific medical condition. And more than this is that people often don't take it seriously. You may have experienced perhaps telling your parents that you feel burnt out and them chalking it up to being lazy or not working hard enough. This only makes it harder to get out of this rut because no one seems to understand you and you barely understand what's going on yourself. So firstly, one of the main indicators for burnout is this general feeling of laziness where beforehand you used to be productive and hardworking. Now, please understand this does not mean that you had to have been an amazing A-star student before this and now you're doing really badly. It can just be subtle changes where perhaps a general school day beforehand or a lecture once a day was bearable and you could do that just fine, but now you really struggle just to get through the day and you find it really difficult to get out of bed and get an assignment done. Now, the reason for this change is that emotions are split into trait and state emotions. So a trait emotion is something that is an integral part of your personality, whereas a state emotion is something you're experiencing in a certain situation and context. So for example, I can be a really happy and bubbly person, that is a trait, but one day I get a really bad exam grade, so I'm feeling sad. That is a state. So if you've always seen yourself as relatively productive or passionate about something, but recently you've really struggled to bring that work ethic out, then it's likely this change is not normal and actually you're in this negative state that you need to get out of, and that is burnout. And obviously this is likely paired with other negative emotions like irritability, frustration, and sadness. Again, these are normal emotions to experience, but if they're persistent and they don't seem to have a specific cause, like a bad exam grade, then this is probably due to burnout. So, what can we do about this? Oftentimes, this burnout and subsequent stress that we feel is due to too much going on. Whether it's school, university, or work, if you have too much on your plate, it can lead to so much stress and exhaustion. And quite honestly, one of the best ways I have found to deal with this is to literally create a clear picture so I know what's going on and I feel a little bit calmer about it. The main reason we become mentally exhausted is because we're trying to visualize everything that is going on and that is coming up in our lives, and we can't do this, especially when those things are very abstract, like write an essay. It's too abstract for us to really work out how we're going to do this, what we're even writing about. It's more mental space for you to take up. It's exhausting. So if you just put all this information into a more tangible, easy to understand form, already you're going to alleviate a lot of that stress. You can do this in two main ways. The first is literally just to write it all down. I do recommend doing this either way. I always talk about timetabling as an amazing stress reliever and making sure that everything that you need to be doing has a realistic amount of time you expect to do it in. Secondly, I also very much recommend talking yourself through everything going on. I'm going to be very honest with you, I talk to myself a lot, and it's one of the best ways to calm myself down when I'm really stressed. You can do this in front of a mirror. This can be a really good way to really feel as if you're talking to a separate person. But either way, it's just a great way to reassure yourself of what is going on in a more detailed and nuanced way than just writing things down. It's more immediate as well, so if you're going through a stressful problem or situation, you don't have to sit down with a pen and paper and try and write it all out. Literally just talk it all out with yourself. You feel so much better afterwards, I promise you. One of the other main reasons for burnout is this mad fixation on the future. We want to achieve our dreams, and rightly so, But when we focus too much of our brain power on what we want to happen and not what is happening, we find that we spiral really easily. But as I just mentioned, it is helpful to write things out for the future, such as your future assignments and goals, but you do not want to hyperfixate on these. These are just to give you a clear roadmap and a peace of mind, but you want to bring yourself back to the present and focus on what you need to do now. So honestly, sometimes the best solution to burnout is to get out of your head a little bit, take a step back, and don't worry too much about the future. Easier said than done, right? This does take time, but there are several tactics you can do just to get you out of that headspace for a bit. Over time, it will become easier to harness these tactics over longer periods of time, and you'll generally feel more grounded. The first is meditation. I know this isn't for everyone, but I do always recommend this. You don't have to be an expert, and you certainly don't have to do it for an hour a day. You could just follow along with a 10-minute guided meditation on YouTube. This is just a great way to bring you back to earth a little bit, clear your mind of all of that. Afterwards, you should feel a little bit more rejuvenated and ready to focus on the present. Any other form of self-care is another great way to take your mind off the future. Essentially, anything that you enjoy to the point where you're not thinking about anything else, you're just purely focused on that thing that makes you happy, is a great form of self-care and a great form of getting out of your head. Finally, one of the most effective and perhaps more long-term solutions to burnout is to accept that not everything is going to be perfect. We stress too much about making things perfect and then put ourselves down when we don't meet our ridiculously high standards. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just accept that not everything is going to be your best piece of work. If we'd accepted from the get-go that an essay won't do as well, or perhaps we're going to be feeling a bit miserable during exam week, then when these events inevitably happen, we deal with them so much better than if we try and make it perfect and try and hold ourselves to these ridiculous standards. So in performance psychology, there is actually a form of cognitive behavioral therapy known as acceptance and commitment therapy. Essentially, what this theory suggests is that instead of trying to control and change our negative thoughts, we should just accept them and feel them for what they are. And this actually leads to better and more positive behavior and thoughts in general. A great quote to make sense of this is, "The harder you struggle, the faster you sink." So essentially, instead of struggling against these negative emotions and these imperfections, if you accept them and say, do you know what, it's fine that I'm gonna feel a bit miserable in exam week, then when you do feel miserable in exam week, you get through those emotions a lot quicker because you're not pushing them down and preventing them. You let them happen, they run their course, you feel better afterwards. And on a bigger scale, this will lead to less burnout because your brain is not exhausted from trying to suppress all these negative emotions and trying to hold up these perfect standards that you just won't reach. I'm not any sort of professional, I'm still studying psychology, so please take these all with a pinch of salt, but these are definitely things that I've found personally have worked and that are also backed up by psychological science. It is important to understand that burnout is a very real thing, and I'm really sorry if you are in a situation where people do not take it seriously. I take it seriously. Please let me know if there's anything else I can tell you and talk to you about. My comments are always a safe place if you want to chat there, or just message me personally. As usual, thank you for watching and happy studying.